Well, hello there, and welcome back to the Showing Up to Life podcast on YouTube. My name is Art Burns, and it's been quite a long time now since I've done a video and a podcast recording here for a new episode. And I just want you to know that I missed you. I really missed doing these podcasts. I really missed, this sort of connection that I feel, and this is going to be something we're going to talk about today, which is really cool. But I just want you to know that I want you to be assured that I'm putting the pressure on myself to do these podcasts. And even though I said that, it's going to be like this, maybe you go 2 weeks without hearing from me and then you'll hear from me 5 days in a row and all that kind of stuff. And even though that was a settled and resolved intention of mine, there's still part of me, and yes, it's at least most of it is the trauma response that says you gotta produce more, you gotta do more, you gotta hold yourself accountable to this. Now, there is a healthy sense of that, right? There is a part of that sort of holding ourselves accountable and pushing ourselves towards that accountability that is healthy, right? It is very healthy. However, there is a level at which, if you will, a tipping point at which that helpfulness turns into something that is degrading and something that is harmful to us. Okay. And that again, when I mentioned the trauma response, right? Like a lot of this is, and this is really how we can mindfully sort of notice and examine and inquire about what is going on, right? Where is this pressure coming from? Right. For me, as I've sat with it and I've done some journaling around it, I've done some just feeling into it and just, investigating on it. And I find that most of it is in my trauma response. Right. There's this voice in my head that is not my voice. It's the voice that's a combination of all the different caregivers I had, all the different teachers, all the different, priests and soccer coaches and all those people in my past that are driving me to feel that I'm not good enough unless I'm doing the podcast. And gosh, I would never want any of you to feel that way. And I believe that you don't want me to feel that way. And so this is not something bad though, right? It's not something where I have to say, oh no, this is a terrible feeling. I gotta, pour water on this to get rid of it or something, right? Or stamp it out like a campfire, right? It's not like that. It's okay that I'm feeling it. It's okay to be experiencing this. Because when I accept that this is what I'm experiencing and when I accept that this is how things are happening right now, that is where I'm able to now turn towards it and say, okay, what is this? Let me understand it more deeply. Rather than scurrying around and making sure I put out the podcast every day, which then, kind of depletes the whole quality level and the effectiveness, the efficacy, I should say, of the podcast. Right, the message becomes weaker. Right, so because I'm pushing myself, because I'm driven by this trauma, I'm actually putting out a lower grade product, if you will. Right. And so that's one response. The other response would say, okay, I guess I'm just no good at podcasts. I'm never going to do another podcast again. I'll just find something else to do with my life, right? Which again also is not, there's something else that whatever I find, whatever else I find in my life is going to pose the same issues. There's always going to be that drive, that sort of pressure that I put on myself because that's inside of me. It has nothing to do with the podcast. It has nothing to do with a hobby. It has nothing to do with my hockey team. It has nothing to do with any of the external stuff. It's about what's going on inside of me, because that's where the trauma is. And that's where, my nervous system and my emotions, my body, my thoughts respond to the trauma that is within me. And the only way to help ourselves through this is to recognize and acknowledge and treat the trauma with, the trauma that lives inside of us, to treat that with care and with love and with understanding. That's the only way out of it. Anything else is just, if you will, kicking the can down the road. And eventually it's going to come back. And that's the one thing you can count on, right? Taxes, death, and trauma responses, right? That's always going to come back. And so when we bring our non-judging and loving awareness to this, that's when we start to resolve the trauma. Right? The trauma only hurts us when it's implicit, when it's not, sort of seen, when we don't know what it is. When I can recognize that, oh, no, this feeling I have right now has nothing to do with the podcast, has nothing to do with my audience, has nothing to do with me in my authentic and genuine self, but it's just this echo of the damage that was done to me and the pressure that was put on to me from many people all across my life. Once I see that, then it's something I can work with. Then it's something I can move past. Then it's something I can say, okay, in spite of how I feel, it's okay. It's okay to just let it go and do something for me instead of pressuring myself to do this podcast, which I don't really have the time or the energy or the drive to do at any given moment, right? And that's exactly what I was saying in the beginning of this sort of reboot of the Showing Up to Life podcast after almost a year off, or actually a year off, I think it was, that I'm going to approach it with this different sensibility, right? In that moment, I was not responding to my trauma, right? In that moment, I was clear and I was understanding and I was me authentically and genuinely. But yet, any given moment, that trauma can make me disbelieve all of that. Now, I'm not a professional therapist, and I think for a lot of people, therapy is important when it comes to trauma. In fact, I would love if I could have somebody just to talk to for an hour a week. Like, oh my gosh, that would be amazing, right? It would really help, right? Because there's not too many people who want to sit and listen to me talk about my trauma, right? I don't drink anymore, so I can't go to a bar and talk to a bartender all night, But I want you to know, though, that while it is very helpful to go to therapy, and for some people, even medication could be the at least temporary answer to help to reclaim some sense of agency over all of this, right? The choice to not be triggered by the trauma response, right? That's what I mean when I say agency, right? That while therapy can be very, very influential or very beneficial, I should say, and also, again, medication could be the answer for some people, at least on a temporary basis. But I want you to know something, that in order to bring the trauma from the implicit to the explicit, mindfulness, and especially when we talk about self-compassion included in the mindfulness, is a way that we can do that. Right. So if you feel that for whatever reason, like me, therapy is not accessible to you, okay, I don't want you to feel hopeless in the face of trauma, because it's not hopeless. All right. Again, I'm not a therapist, but I'm happy to teach you some practices and some exercises that you can do to cultivate a different or cultivate healing is really what I'm talking about. And the healing comes from integrating those experiences that are deep, deep, deep down and out of the sight and out of the consciousness, and bringing those into the consciousness, bringing the implicit to the explicit, shining the light on it. Now, that brings me in a very strange segue to what I wanted to talk about today. Because what I wanted to talk about today is, very much related to what I'm saying here. Now, when we become traumatized, right, and any time that we have difficulty, when we're feeling like there's something wrong with us, or we're feeling like that life is challenging us, in almost all circumstances that fall under those categories, we get a sense of isolation. We get a sense of separateness. Right? Like, I am the one that's suffering. Nobody else could be as blank as me right now. Right? It's not just you. It's not just me. It's not just your friend. It's not just your neighbor. It's not just your relatives. Everybody, at least humans, have the tendency towards this, feeling isolated in the face of suffering. The Buddha said that all suffering arises from the delusion of separateness. All suffering arises from the delusion of separateness. And that's what I really wanted to talk about today. That in America, for sure. I mean, I've read a couple of articles in the last few months that have, even one article that was like pretty old, like it was like 9 years old or something like that. And these articles are talking about this. We had the COVID pandemic, right? But the COVID pandemic came on the sort of what do they call it? The coattails of another pandemic that's been creeping and advancing for decades, and that is the pandemic of loneliness. Now, again, I'm pretty sure that these, or not again, I did another take of this. I'm actually, this is take 2 here. So in my previous take, I was saying that, I don't know if this is just an American thing or if it's a global thing. In fact, I'm pretty sure these articles, as I recall, and I didn't read them, I didn't brush up before this this episode. You know me, I fly from the hip here. I believe that they were talking about mostly America, but I think they were saying it's pretty much a global issue at this point. But I would love to hear from you, and I would love to hear what you feel in your culture about loneliness. If you could tell me, okay, either email me, drop a comment on the YouTube, however you can get to me, okay? Art@ArtBurnsCoaching is the email address. That's the easiest way for me. Or a comment on YouTube is great too, whatever. I know we can't do, I think there's a poll that I can put, I'll put a question in on Spotify for the podcast also. So I would love to hear from you what you believe to be lonely or the impact of loneliness in your culture where you live. Because I know only about less than 60% of you are in America, right? So I would love to hear what the other 40% of you have to say about this, because I think it is a particularly and specifically American issue, right? That we have this sort of rugged individualism, right? That started as this idea that, we can manage, we can, take care of ourselves. And I mean, I live in Colorado. This is the land of rugged individualism, right? But the reality is that this rugged individualism has transformed into what we can really call a pandemic of loneliness, right? Now, another specifically American trait is that most of my American friends out there, my American countrymen and women out there, are probably sitting there saying right now, at least some of you are, I know it, I'm not lonely. I have lots of friends. I go out to the bar all the time. I play hockey 2 or 3 times a week with the same people. I go to this, bridge club, or I have season tickets to the Rockies. Not many people have season tickets to the Rockies at this point. I don't think they're very good. But anyway, I think you get my point, right? That most of us are going to say, even though most of us are lonely, according to research that I was reading about in these articles, most of us are going to say we're not lonely, because we feel like we're around people all the time. And so therefore, how can I be lonely? Duh. Right? But the duh is actually on us, because the truth is that being lonely has nothing to do with being around other people. Nor is it the antithesis of loneliness or the healing from loneliness that is to be around other people. That has nothing to do with it. Right? Because you can even be in some pretty close friendships and still feel loneliness. Because the opposite of loneliness, similar to the opposite of addiction, right, which I think is very closely tied to one another. I think most people who are suffering from addiction are suffering from the sort of on the far end of the spectrum of loneliness, right? And they say that the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. By the way, I don't think I did a podcast since last week or so. On August 16th, it's 12 years sobriety for yours truly. So I know whence I speak. But the reality is, though, that's true for loneliness too. Right? It's not just, the opposite of loneliness is not just being around other people. The opposite of loneliness is being connected. And ironically, we can be alone and not with other people and still cultivate a sense of connection. And that's the beauty here, right? That's the magical thing here, is that, for all of you introverts like me, who are sitting here saying like, oh my gosh, loneliness, I gotta go out and make more friends and stuff. That's not the case. It's actually kind of the opposite. right? That what we need is we need to just feel connected. And that means not just feeling connected to other people. It means feeling connected to our moment by moment experience, feeling connected to ourselves first and foremost, which then brings us a sense of connection to everyone and everywhere. And the way we can do this, my friends, is through the practice of kindness. Now, I've talked about this before, and I'll talk about it again after this, I'm sure. But the truth is that kindness is not about the act of kindness. I was at the library yesterday for the first time in forever, and fortunately I still had my account and stuff. They gave me a new library card, which was exciting, and I got a book out, which was awesome. But the woman behind the desk who was helping me with getting my library card sorted out, she had a shirt on. It was a cute shirt, it had a rainbow and little, one of those with like the red collar and sleeves, real cute shirt, and it had a rainbow with a couple of clouds, and it said, "Be kind." You've all seen the design. It's nothing, nothing new. Probably a design from like the 70s or something like that, right? Or trying to replicate a design from the 70s, more likely. But anyway, the idea is that, I think what we tend to confuse, just like we confuse, the opposite of loneliness being just around other people, right? Because you can be lonely in a crowd of people, right? I mean, poets have written about that for ages, right? And I think in a very similar way, we have this conflation of the idea of kindness being the act of kindness. So when somebody says "be kind," or a T-shirt says "be kind," or a bumper sticker, or a poster, I see a Dolly Parton on a billboard saying "be kind," right? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with encouraging people to be kind, right? But I think what most people hear when they hear "be kind" is do stuff that is kind. But that's not what it's saying, right? Just like, John Kabat-Zinn hilariously says that we should, he's been lobbying forever, for 40 years now, for us to change the name of our species from human beings to human doings, because none of us are ever just being. And so this is really, it's not that shirt is not wrong, right? The shirt is definitely not wrong to say "be kind." But again, I think most of us perceive that as saying, okay, be kind. That means, hold the door open for someone, or give up your seat on the bus, or pay for somebody's, order in the drive-thru, the person behind you, or in a toll booth or something like that. Now, all those acts of kindness are beautiful, and I'm not trying to discourage you from doing those kinds of things. That is generosity, and that is kindness that is going to come back to you in very important ways. Not with a free coffee someday. I mean, maybe it will, maybe it won't, but it comes back to you in the sense of well-being, okay? So it's definitely worth doing those kind things, right? And in fact, I often assign my clients, especially when I work in corporate groups, I assign people to do 3 kind things for some of your coworkers today. Doesn't have to be the same person, doesn't have to be different people, but do 3 things today that are acts of kindness for the people you work for. It's an amazing practice. It's a wonderful practice. However, the shirt and the billboard and the bumper sticker and everything else is not saying do kindness. It's saying be kind. Now let's talk about that. How do we be kind? What is the process of being kind? Well, it's a moment by moment process of, very simply, in a word, caring, right? It's having a sense of caring for the world around you, for the moment by moment experience that you're living through, and also for yourself and everyone else, right? But now again, it has nothing at all to do with your actions. Your actions are the result of being kind. And so don't worry about the actions right away. Unless you have a coach that assigned you those 3 things to do every day, there's a specific reason he or she is doing that. So follow the instructions. But otherwise, when you're just flipping through a magazine and you see something say, be kind, recognize that that is not, the idea of being kind is the first step. And the act of kindness is the last step. And so the act of kindness is a result of the being kind. I hope that is clear for you. I hope that I'm not explaining that in a way that's hard to understand. When I say, does that make sense, or do you get that? I'm not saying that I don't believe you're smart enough to get it. It's saying I don't believe I'm explaining it clearly enough for anyone to understand it, right? Because it's coming out of this swirling, storm of my thoughts, right? But here's what we're talking about, okay? Very, very simply. Moment by moment, recognizing whether we are feeling a sense of caring for ourselves, for the other people around us, or other people who are not around us, and for the world and just everything that's arising right now. And moment by moment, we can check in and notice, are we feeling this sense of care right now? Or are we not feeling this sense of care right now? And this becomes the practice. And really, ultimately, this is all you ever need to do, right? When the Buddha first taught meditation to people, right, he was teaching people who were laborers and farmers and peasants. These people were not, walking around with a venti latte and a yoga mat and got a half hour to kill before their yoga class, right? These are people who are very, very busy from dawn till dusk and had to get to sleep because they had to get right up at dawn the next day and milk cows and plow fields and do all the hard work of life. And so the Buddha didn't say, okay, stop what you're doing for 20 minutes and sit cross-legged and do the meditation. He taught them to be present with what it is they were doing. So if you're plowing a field, plow the field to plow the field. Don't plow the field to get it done so you get on the next thing. And don't be planning what you're going to do next while you're plowing the field. Be present with plowing the field. That's the practice. Now, I'm not going to say, right, or I am going to say that it is very, very, very helpful for maybe a few weeks, maybe a month, give yourself 30 days of doing a specific kindness practice every day for 5 or 10 minutes a day. And I can give you that practice. It's super simple. But doing that, even for 2 or 3 weeks every day, then we start to develop the habit of that feeling in us, right? Because right now, most of us don't have that habit. And this is, again, why we feel so lonely, I think, that most of us feel competitive towards each other. Most of us feel, combative even, belligerent to some extent, right? When somebody delays somebody at a red light, you hear, the most horrible language, right? Like people are ready to fight each other, right? And so we're not all sitting here thinking, in that moment of being at a red light or the light turns and the person doesn't go right away, right? In that moment, do you feel into yourself and feel, do you feel that anger, like this MFer got to get out of my way and honk your horn? Or do you notice that you're feeling that way? And in noticing you feel that way, recognize that that is not being kind, that you are at that moment outside of kindness. Now, again, it doesn't mean that you got to always do everything nice. And in fact, this is a really important point. The difference between nice and kind could not be more dramatic. Nice does not equal kind in any aspect. In fact, kindness allows us to say, hey, dummy, get out of the way, right? Although we don't call somebody a dummy, right? We don't say that. We don't intentionally try to hurt somebody in kindness, right? But we don't avoid telling them something that's difficult for them to hear, right? So maybe instead of, hey, dummy MFer, we say, excuse me, you're holding everybody up here. Can we get going? Right? And I'm just giving you one simple example, right? But the point is that it's very important to recognize that kindness, again, it's not the act. It's the energy within us. And that allows for us to not necessarily be nice. And in fact, being nice is dishonest. It's holding things in. It's denying our feelings, right? Kindness allows us to feel the feeling of anger and frustration. But kindness allows us to feel that with the sense of investigation of it. Like, what is this really all about? Is this about the fact that this person's sitting here and wasting 30 seconds of my life? Or is it maybe something different? Is there a trauma connection to this? Is there something that I'm, automatically feeling? Am I assuming something about this person? Am I assuming that they're just, screwing around on their phone or something instead of maybe something's really going on with this person? Right? This is what kindness allows. Again, what comes out of our mouth and the end result has nothing to do with the kindness. Now, the kindness is going to promote and propel whatever comes out of our mouth and whatever action we take. So generally speaking, we're going to find ourselves being more polite. We're going to find ourselves being more tolerant. We're going to find ourselves not saying the things that are going to be hurtful towards others. Right? But we don't start there. Because the problem with starting there is we're not going to remember. In those moments where we're triggered in something, that conscious intention is out of the picture. And that's why we have to do the practices for a few weeks to train our body to be in that, to know what it feels like, to recognize the kindness. Because really, it's in the recognizing of the kindness, the training ourselves to recognize when we are feeling that sense of care is the same thing as training ourselves to recognize when that sense of care is absent, when we've wandered from it. And this is the same practice as attention training in mindfulness, is what we call mindfulness, right? Which is whether you're in formal meditation or, like the Buddha would say, meditate while plowing a field, right? As you're plowing the field. I don't think most of you are plowing fields, but let's say brushing our teeth. This is one of the first practices I give every single client I work with. So as you're brushing your teeth, listen to the sound of the toothbrush in your mouth. Not an electric toothbrush, or it doesn't have to be an electric toothbrush. But I'm talking about just listen to the sound that is being made by you brushing your teeth. And then when you recognize that, I'm not listening to the sound anymore, but instead I'm thinking about what I'm going to eat for lunch, or I'm thinking about the meeting I have at 3 o'clock, or I'm thinking about an email I have to send, right now you recognize that, okay, I'm no longer present right here. And as soon as you recognize that you're no longer present, boom, you're back in the present and you're back to listening to the toothbrush, right? And so in that same way, right, and that's exactly the practice. Whether you're in formal meditation or any form of informal meditation, it's about recognizing that the attention has wandered and then bringing it back. And the more we do that, the more we create a strength and as they call it, the muscle of mindfulness. Right? And it becomes something that we're more capable of doing. It's even habitual on a certain level, right? Where it's like, it's automatic. Like, wait a second, I'm not present right now. Oh, now I'm back to present. I'm not feeling kind right now. Oh, I'm back to feeling kind. Because as soon as I notice it, I'm expressing a care, right? I'm expressing kindness by noticing the absence of kindness, or noticing that kindness has wandered off in some way. And my friends, I am convinced this is the answer to the loneliness. Because every moment that you spend in that sense of kindness, in that sense of caring for your moment-by-moment experience, you are connected. Doesn't mean you're going to have more friends. In fact, I have fewer friends now than I've ever had, but I feel more connected to the whole world. Like, I go to the supermarket and I have like miraculous experiences of connection. Even if I'm not talking to people, like I'm not, maybe a word here, word there, just a smile, a kind like nod to someone. And then you're ready for the conversations. If somebody does say something, you're ready to be there with them. And hey, I'm present with you. Let's talk about, what's going on when you get out of work. Like this one girl the other day was telling me, I hope it doesn't rain because I had my schedule changed today and I'm going to go to the pool if, in my building, if it's still nice out. And I want you to know, I was thinking about that girl for 2 days and hoping that she got to the pool because she seems so excited about it. I don't know this woman's name. I couldn't tell you anything about her, but yet she lives in my heart. And her happiness is connected to my happiness. And I tell you, I'm like tearing up just thinking about this. And it's not just her. It's also the girl who I said, I just wanted to say, it seems like you've lost some weight and you look really, really good. The look on this woman's face when I said that was like something I will never forget. Again, I'm tearing up because I feel this connection. And again, I'm just sitting here all alone in a basement office here. That's quite frankly not really nice. I dress it up for the camera and stuff, but it's a basement room here. Nothing special, nothing magical, nothing mystical. But yet I am in a state of bliss and like just overwhelming joy. Not because things are going so well, not because of any kind of luxury or anything like that, but simply because I feel the deepest connection. And then ultimately what that means is that I start seeing myself in everyone. That's what really goes on, is that you see that person at Starbucks who's yelling at a barista, I see myself in that person. And as I see myself in that person, the intention changes, right? It goes from this intention of, oh man, I'm going to go, punch that person in the nose, to, gosh, what can I do to support this person? Because I can clearly see that they are suffering. And that's where kindness becomes compassion, and compassion becomes kindness, and the whole thing just becomes this beautiful experience. And every morning I wake up with the opportunity to feel this sense of connection, moment by moment, throughout my entire life, my entire existence. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm rigidly there. It's never about that. Attention is not about that. Kindness is not about that. And compassion is not about that. It's not about rigidly adhering to something. Like, oh, I'm always kind. I will never not be kind, right? That's silly, right? It's always about noticing when you have wandered from the attention, wandered from the kindness, wandered from the compassion. When you notice that, and then returning to it. That's the magic. That's the true, absolute magic in all of this. And you can do that only through the habit of it, right? Now, listen, if you can remind yourself to do this all day, more power to you. Go for it. But I cannot stress how helpful it is to do two specific practices. Okay. One is a practice that I have labeled for my own benefit. It's certainly a translation from an ancient practice, right? Or a traditional practice. It is ancient too. Of loving kindness, right? Where you're just picturing people in your life and you're wishing them well. Okay. And I can send you the document that explains this. Okay. But you're sitting down for a few minutes every day, hopefully maybe 2, maybe even 3 times a day you do this, and you just sit there and you picture people in your lives, and but it's a specific process. So it's not as simple as I'm saying, but it is very, very simple. And then another practice, which I really encourage you can start doing this today. Set a timer to go off on your phone, or somehow remind yourself that every hour or so, stop for 10 seconds and look around you, and anybody you can see, whether you're driving in your car, you're standing online in a supermarket, you're, at your desk all alone, wherever you are, if you don't see people around you, just imagine people. Just imagine the store clerks and the people driving, the police officers and the ambulance drivers. Just imagine them. Or if you see people, just every person you see, one at a time, for 10 seconds, just say in your mind, I wish you well. My friends, do that for 7 days. Do both of these for 7 days or 14 days, and you are going to be on your way to recognizing that moment-by-moment sense of caring, that moment-by-moment kind intention. And my friends, I cannot tell you how valuable this is. So I truly, truly, highly encourage you to do this, okay? All right, everybody. It's been a wonderful episode. Great to get back with you today. I wish you all well, and I hold you in the kindness and compassion of my heart. And yeah, I wish you well. Thank you for joining me today. I'll be back again real soon, I promise. Take care. Bye bye.